The Toronto Wolfpack were one of the fastest growing sports teams in the world, but just 6 months after reaching the top flight, they were on the brink of extinction. They averaged healthy crowds, attracted major sponsors, and even signed the LeBron James of rugby league. Yet, while some key figures claim the club was set up to fail, their rapid success only masked deeper cracks and raised serious questions about the sport's vision for expansion. This is the rise and fall of the Toronto Wolfpack. The Toronto Wolfpack story begins in 2004 when Canadian sports enthusiast Eric Perez and his friend Corey Tukali stumbled upon a rugby league match while in Birmingham, England. Watching Leeds vs Bradford on Sky Sports, they were instantly hooked. Perez described the game as incredible, calling it the most Canadian sport not played in Canada. The fast-paced nature, physicality, and finesse reminded him of ice hockey, Canada's most watched sport. Over the years, Perez became a passionate fan, convinced that rugby league could thrive in Canada. In 2010, Perez and Tukeli sought advice from the International Rugby League Federation on how to introduce the sport to Canada. They were advised to start with an international team, so they reached out to the US to organize a fixture. To build a squad, they recruited players on university campuses and remarkably pulled together a competitive team. Their first match drew 1,000 spectators, and despite a narrow loss to the US by 4 points, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Encouraged to grow the sport, they secured a Super League TV deal in Canada and launched a match of the day style show, while Tukali helped the Canadian national team schedule a match against Jamaica to coincide with Toronto's Caribbean Carnival, drawing strong local interest. Momentum continued to build. Canada won its first ever match against Jamaica, and the following year they defeated the US 18-16. Regular fixtures against the US and Jamaica became the Caribbean Carnival Cup, consistently drawing great crowds in Toronto. By 2014, Perez set his sights on a bigger goal, launching the first Transatlantic professional sports team. His vision gained backing from key figures in the rugby league world. Thanks to his impressive efforts in growing the sport in Canada, discussions with the Rugby Football League progressed, but Toronto would be denied direct entry into Super League. Instead, they would have to start in League One, the third tier of European Rugby League. Toronto's participation came with a major financial commitment. The Wolfpack would cover all travel costs for visiting teams. They would not receive central funding, the TV revenue split among clubs, while playing their home and away fixtures in blocks of 5 and would be based in Bradford during their away stretches. The club also had the freedom of negotiating their own TV and sponsorship deals within North America. Perez claims that in the initial deal, Toronto was supposed to receive central funding, but the agreement was changed at the last minute.
By the way, when I started Toronto and I brought them in and we did that deal was actually a last minute change. On the original deal was not that, but it was a last minute change. And we were already so far down the road. I actually lost all my investors and had to look for new ones. And that's when I found David Argyle.
The RFL disputes this, insisting no funding was ever promised. Toronto also paid a bond of £500,000 to join the Challenge Cup, to cover the loss of revenue in ticket sales if they were to ever reach the showpiece final. After over 3 years of discussions, the RFL formally approved Toronto's entry on April 27, 2016. The move was met with excitement across the rugby league world, with the RFL publicly backing the expansion. However, the risk lay entirely on Toronto's investors, while the governing body and other clubs had little to lose. With their entry into League One secured, Eric Perez took on the role of chief executive, while legendary former Great Britain and Bradford Bulls coach Brian Noble was named director of rugby. To lead the squad, the Wolfpack hired Paul Rowley, a well-respected coach with a strong track record in the game. Even before playing a match, the Wolfpack were making waves. Rowley was invited to throw the first pitch at a Toronto Blue Jays game, signalling their ambition to expand the sport's exposure beyond traditional rugby league markets. The excitement was reflected in the numbers. The Wolfpack sold 3,000 season passes before kicking a ball, secured 10,000 capacity Lamport Stadium as their home, and landed a major sponsorship deal with Air Transat. Toronto assembled an impressive roster, blending Super League experience with emerging North American talent and experienced championship players who would be proud to represent the Canadian side. Determined to embrace their origins, Noble insisted the squad should feature at least 5 or 6 Canadian players. To achieve this, the Wolfpack held trials across major US and Canadian cities, leading to the signings of Canadian Quinn Ngawati, American Joe Eichner, and Jamaican Nathan Campbell. With this squad, expectations were sky high. The Wolfpack were expected not just to win promotion, but to dominate the competition. Toronto's competitive journey began in February 2017, debuting in the Challenge Cup against top amateur side Sidal. In challenging conditions, they battled to a 14-6 victory.
Here's a chance, Worthington with the pass.
On March 4th, they played their first ever League One match, destroying the London Skolars 76-0. And in the fourth round of the Challenge Cup, they defeated Championship side London Broncos, setting up a fifth round showdown with Super League Salford Red Devils. Against Salford, Toronto showed they could compete with top-tier teams, narrowly losing 29-22 in an entertaining, hard-fought battle, their first ever defeat. With the away fixtures complete, Toronto headed home for their historic first-ever match at Lamport Stadium, facing Oxford. In front of a passionate crowd, they put on a show, winning 62-12. From there, the Wolfpack steamrolled the league, winning their remaining 9 fixtures and only failing to score 50-plus points once. Their average attendance at Lamport was 7,000, proving rugby league's appeal in Toronto. League One's postseason structure required the top 8 teams to play 7 more rounds of fixtures, with first place earning automatic promotion. The next 4 teams battled for a second promotion spot in a playoff structure, while the bottom 3 were eliminated from the postseason. Toronto continued their dominance, winning 5 of their 7 Super 8s matches, securing top spot and automatic promotion. Liam Kay finished as the club's top try scorer. Craig Hall, Blake Wallace and Jonathan Pownall stood out as key performers. Despite the club's on-field success, tensions behind the scenes surfaced. At the end of the season, Eric Perez stepped down, citing disagreements with David Argyle over the club's management. Rumours of missed payments also swirled, though nothing concrete was reported at the time. With promotion secured and the Wolfpack's momentum growing, their next challenge awaited in the championship, a step closer to their ultimate goal, Super League. However, the path to Super League was far from straightforward. Under the league structure, Toronto needed to finish in the top 4 of the championship to qualify for the Qualifiers, where they and 3 other championship clubs would compete against the bottom 4 Super League teams in a 7-game round robin. The top 3 teams would earn automatic promotion to Super League. The bottom 3 would remain in the championship. 4th versus 5th would face off in the infamous £1 million game, a high-stakes final where the winner secured a Super League spot. With this high-pressure format, Toronto needed to strengthen their squad to compete with top-flight clubs. They made a major statement by signing halfback Josh McCrone from the NRL, Warrington Wolves prop Ashton Sims, and versatile forward Joe Westerman, paying £130,000 for the Super League star. They also raided relegated Leigh, picking up Corey Patterson, Adam Higson, and Sam Hopkins. The squad was further bolstered by NRL powerhouse Dave Taylor and hooker Andy Ackers from the London Broncos. To accommodate their growing ambitions, the team relocated their UK training base to Manchester Metropolitan University, ensuring higher standards of facilities. However, pre-season drama struck when Fuifue Moi Moi, Dave Taylor and Ryan Bailey were all sacked due to an undisclosed incident during training camp in Portugal. Taylor, who had signed a £1 million 3-year deal, never even played a game for the club. With Craig Hall leaving for personal reasons, Josh McCrone was named captain, with Ashton Sims as vice-captain. Toronto opened their championship campaign with a statement victory over relegated Leigh Centurions, 34-12. However, early inconsistencies followed, a draw with Barrow and their heaviest ever defeat to London Broncos. By March, the Wolfpack hit their stride, winning 4 straight games. Joe Westerman, who cost £130,000, left the club just 6 games into the season. Noble later stated it was due to a difference of opinion on club principles and policies. Determined to reinforce their squad, Toronto made more key signings. Super League playmaker Gareth O'Brien, famous for his clutch drop goal in the 2016 £1 million game.
O'Brien has gone for it, and he's got it! O'Brien!
NRL centre Chase Stanley adding experience and quality to their back line. By June, they were on a 12-game winning streak as they faced the London Broncos, the only team to beat them so far in this season. The Wolfpack avenged their defeat with a dominant 32-12 victory before clinching the league leaders' shield in style with a 68-4 demolition of Sheffield Eagles. Toronto entered the qualifiers alongside championship rivals London Broncos, Toulouse and Halifax, while Super League opposition included Leeds, Salford, Hull KR and Widnes. Their start was mixed, with Widnes in turmoil, having won just 3 Super League games all year, and starting the qualifiers 0-4, a championship team had a golden opportunity to claim promotion. Toronto edged past Toulouse 13-12, thanks to another clutch Gareth O'Brien drop goal. A 2012 victory over Widnes secured their spot spot in the £1 million game, but a win over Leeds, paired with losses for Hull KR or Salford, could have seen them avoid it altogether. Against Leeds, Toronto pushed the reigning Super League champions to the limit. With the game tied late, Gareth O'Brien delivered once again, nailing a crucial drop goal to secure the win.
And he's kicked it as Gareth O'Brien.
However, Hull KR and Salford also won, leaving Toronto fourth on points difference, meaning they would face London Broncos in the £1 million game. Toronto attracted their biggest ever crowd, 9,000 plus fans, for the promotion decider against London. The Broncos were one of just 2 teams to beat them in the championship. Toronto entered as heavy favourites, but London possessed the quality to cause another upset. In a gritty, tryless game, the Broncos held on for a shock 4-2 victory, stunning the home crowd. Despite Toronto having 4 tries disallowed, they simply couldn't break through London's defensive wall. Owner David Argyle called the loss a setback, but insisted it wasn't the end of their 5-year plan for Super League. Despite the heartbreak, the season was a huge success. League leaders Shield winners, big matches against Super League opposition, massive fanbase growth with an average of 7,000 plus per game. Liam Kay once again led the club in tries scored. Josh McCrone, Gareth O'Brien and Ashton Sims proved valuable leaders. The Wolfpack would have to wait another year for their shot at Super League, but they were far from finished. The 2019 season brought a Major League restructure, eliminating the Super 8's qualifiers. Instead, a traditional playoff format was introduced, meaning Toronto only had to beat championship clubs to secure promotion. The Wolfpack already had a squad capable of winning the championship, which in theory could have allowed them to spend more conservatively. But Toronto didn't do conservative. Determined to dominate, the Wolfpack made major signings, headlined by NRL star Ricky Luttel, who signed a 3-year, £1 million plus contract, making him the highest paid centre in rugby league history. They also brought in former England international John Wilkin, New Zealand international Bodine Thompson, Super League talent Anthony Mullally, Joe Mellor and Tom Alderson. Coaching changes also raised expectations. Paul Rowley departed at the end of 2018, replaced by Brian McDermott, one of Super League's all-time greats. As a player, McDermott won 3 grand finals with Bradford. As a coach, he led Leeds Rhinos to 4 Super League titles. With elite coaching and a stacked squad, Toronto were the clear favourites for promotion. Toronto stormed through the championship, winning 26 of their 27 matches. Their only defeat came in round 6 against Toulouse, their closest rivals. Despite their dominance, some teams pushed them to the limit, including playoff-bound Featherstone Rovers and Leigh. These hard-fought games hinted that challenges might await in the playoffs. Off the field, the season wasn't without controversy. Owner David Argyle resigned as chairman and CEO after making racist remarks towards Swinton Lions player Say Kenga. Argyle later apologised, and Kenga forgave him, but insisted the situation still needed to be severely addressed. Toronto entered the playoffs in dominant form, playing once again in front of strong crowds at Lamport Stadium. In the semi-finals, they met Toulouse at Lamport. The high-profile clash drew over 9,000 fans, and Ricky Luttel's hat-trick powered Toronto to a 40-24 victory.
He's going in! This is going to be it! The hat-trick for Ricky Luttel!
The grand final was a massive occasion. For 60 minutes, history looked like it might repeat itself. Part-time Featherstone, just like London, put on a defensive masterclass, frustrating the Wolfpack and keeping the game in the balance. But this time, Toronto found a way through. Late tries from Blake Wallace, Bodine Thompson and Joe Mellor sealed a 24-6 victory, sending the Wolfpack to Super League. New CEO Bob Hunter called the promotion a stepping stone toward growing rugby league in North America, believing a Canadian team in Super League would take the sport to new heights.
If you're anything of a rugby fan, you'll know the name Sonny Bill Williams. And today in the UK, the official announcement he's coming to play for the Toronto Wolfpack.
The Toronto Wolfpack made global headlines with the signing of Sonny Bill Williams, in what was arguably the biggest signing in rugby league history. Williams, often dubbed the LeBron James of rugby league, signed a 2-year contract worth £2.6 million per season, making him the highest paid player in rugby history. The Super League salary cap was £2.1 million, and only £150,000 of Williams and Luttel's contract counted toward it, as they occupied Toronto's 2 marquee player slots. Director of Rugby Brian Brian Noble hoped Super League would offer salary cap concessions, given that, as an expansion club, Toronto had no academy system to produce homegrown players, unlike other teams that could gain cap relief for developing talent. By contrast, Catalan's Dragons, who joined Super League in 2006, were exempt from relegation for 3 seasons, a move that allowed them to develop into a long-term success story. They finished bottom in their debut season, but by 2008 had climbed to 3rd place, and they later won the Challenge Cup and made the Super League Grand Final. However, Super League CEO Robert Elstone ruled out similar protection for Toronto, insisting they had to prove they were a long-term asset to the competition. Despite signing Brad Singleton and James Cunningham, Toronto entered the season with just 24 players, far fewer than most Super League squads, which typically operate with 30 players. Noble acknowledged squad depth would be their biggest challenge, but few actually predicted Toronto for relegation. Many believed McDermott's coaching pedigree and Toronto's home advantage would see them survive. Most predictions had Hull KR as the relegation favourites, with Huddersfield Giants and Wakefield Trinity also expected to struggle. Toronto's Super League debut came against Castleford Tigers. Sonny Bill Williams started on the bench due to limited pre-season training. Liam Kay, Toronto's first ever signing, fittingly scored their first ever Super League try.
Can Kay get there first? He can! And the first try for Toronto in Super League!
The Wolfpack fell 28-10 to Castleford, a team expected to be playoff contenders. The fixture list did them no favours. After a narrow round 2 loss to Salford, Toronto faced a gauntlet of Super League heavyweights: Wigan Warriors, Warrington Wolves, St Helens, Leeds. They lost all 4, conceding 32+ points in each game. In February, Toronto signed French fullback Tony Dugot to address their depth issues. Despite a 0-6 start, there were still reasons for optimism. Toronto had a favourable set of home fixtures approaching, with a chance to pick up crucial points at Lamport Stadium. Before returning home, Toronto faced Huddersfield Giants in the Challenge Cup. With Chase Stanley back from visa issues, the Wolfpack delivered their best performance of the season, winning 18-0 behind 2 tries from Lloyd Taylor. It was a much-needed confidence boost as Toronto finally headed home to Canada, where they hoped to turn their season around.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
In March 2020, COVID-19 would bring the world to a standstill, and Super League was no exception. The season was postponed, and while UK-based clubs accessed government furlough schemes and a £16 million loan from the RFL, Toronto had no such support. With no revenue from home games and no financial aid, their future was in serious jeopardy. The league set a return date of August 2nd. However, just weeks before their comeback match, Toronto withdrew from the season, citing unmanageable financial strain. In a statement, the club admitted, "The COVID pandemic has presented unexpected and overwhelming financial challenges. We would be left covering significant additional costs simply to complete a season of games in the UK, including COVID testing, stadium rentals, medical costs, and player pay increases." Despite their withdrawal, Toronto stated they fully intended to return for the 2021 season, but faced major resistance from clubs who felt betrayed by the timing of their announcement. On August 3rd, 2020, Super League officially terminated Toronto's participation agreement. On the same day, owner David Argyle announced he was stepping away, putting the club up for sale. Having reportedly invested £18 million, Argyle admitted he could no longer fund the project. Toronto's roster fell apart overnight. Sonny Bill Williams returned to the Sydney Roosters, Ricky Leutel joined Melbourne Storm, Gareth O'Brien signed with Castleford Tigers. Several players retired, while others were forced to drop down to part-time rugby. Argyle promised to settle unpaid wages, making a £1,500 goodwill payment to players and staff. However, many had gone months without pay, including Lloyd Taylor, who admitted he had been living off his savings. Wolfpack founder Eric Perez claimed the club's downfall was inevitable, arguing that the pandemic accelerated an already fragile financial situation.
Eventually the inequality of the Toronto deal was going to rear its head. I look at Toronto like an orange that rugby league has been squeezing and squeezing and squeezing to get every last bit of juice out of them. Instead of taking that orange, seeing that it's grown, plucking out the seeds and building an orange orchard.
Despite this, Toronto still had a chance to rejoin the league. Carlo Livolsi, a Canadian businessman, stepped forward with a plan to take over the club, promising to pay £500,000 in unpaid wages, settle outstanding debts, provide an 80-page document detailing his long-term vision. However, his first proposal was rejected, and he was given 4 more weeks to improve it. Super League CEO Robert Elstone said the league wanted to give Toronto every opportunity to present a viable case. In November 2020, Super League clubs met to decide Toronto's fate. The results? 8 clubs voted against reinstatement. St. Helens, Leeds, Catalans, and the RFL voted in favour. Elstone explained that a comprehensive review of the North American market found no material revenue benefits in the short or medium term. Wakefield's chairman called the bid not credible. In truth, Toronto's downfall had been brewing for years. From the start, the club was based on false promises and myths. They bet on landing a lucrative North American TV deal, but never did. They rejected central funding, believing they could be self-sufficient. Their North American talent pipeline never materialized. Their salary cap mismanagement was disastrous. They maxed out their cap with just 22 players in 2020. Even the claim of being the first ever transatlantic sports club was false. In 1991, there was an American Football League with clubs from the US, Canada, and Europe all competing. Even before the pandemic, cracks had already appeared. The club missed player salaries in December 2019, but it was put down as a blip and a short-term problem. Visa issues left players illegally living in the UK under tourist visas, not working visas. This was a constant issue throughout their time, but only came to light in 2020. Despite all of this, they were on track to average 9,000 fans per game in Super League. Toronto's final bid for survival rested on proving they were a viable business, but their revenue projections were wildly optimistic, while costs were underestimated. In the end, it wasn't just a case of bad luck. It was mismanagement from day one. Brian Noble believed the club was set up to fail, but Noble was a key figure in running the club, and he was aware of the visa issues from a long time, but is said to have ignored it. The Home Office was reportedly ready to investigate. Castleford, Warrington, and Wakefield said it took up to a year to receive the full transfer fees agreed for selling their players to the Wolfpack. John Wilkin revealed one former player was forced to sell dog food door-to-door to survive. To this day, former players and staff are looking to recoup missed payments. Super League had every reason to be skeptical, and while Rugby League desperately needed expansion, Toronto's flawed foundation made it impossible to continue. The dream of a transatlantic rugby league franchise was over, at least for now.